We call to order the March 6, 2023 workshop meeting from the Township Council. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. Councilwoman Vicio is joining us tonight via phone, so she can hear you, and we'll be able to hear her if she has any questions. First tonight on the agenda is a presentation for Metroplex from Bob Tucker.
Not Bob Tucker.
You're not Bob Tucker. You're definitely not Bob Tucker.
Bob's a lot taller than I am. Good evening. I think most people know Rob Lewis, not Bob Tucker, from Kaplan Stewart, and I represent the Goldenberg Group. Actually, let me hand out these. You can have them in front of you. We decided in this room a 24 by 36 was going to be unreadable, so hand that to you. Thank you. I'm always a little bit embarrassed because I know Karen knows the background better than I do. So please feel free to correct me, Karen, if I'm wrong at any point in time. But so Goldenberg is the owner of the Metroplex Retail Center. For those that might not know all the history, I think most of you probably have been here for most of this time. But back in 1998, I think it was, which is hard to believe that was 25 years ago already, Plymouth Township amended its zoning ordinance to provide for redevelopment of a site that we all now call the Metroplex along Chemical Road. Back then, the site itself was over 100 acres of undeveloped ground next to what was the relatively newly opened Blue Route, going back that far. Council created a zoning district called the Mixed Use Development District, and through all that permanent approval process, the property was split into really two tracts. The one further to the east that we refer to as the Metroplex Corporate Center, and the one to the west being the Metroplex Retail Center. I know I've spent a bunch of time in front of council in the last year talking about the corporate center side for Brandywine, but I'm here this evening about the retail side. For a number of years, Goldenberg Group has been investigating the opportunity to expand the retail center and the offerings in that center. We probably first started meeting with staff on expansion plans eight years ago, maybe more. Various plans over time. I mean, I know Shelley Simpson was still on council when we started meeting with council about potential expansion plans. So it's been ongoing for quite some time. In fact, we got very close to coming public with some proposed expansion plans shortly before the pandemic. Pandemic hit, everything was shelved, and we really needed to see how retail was going to shake out coming out of the pandemic. We think we now have a pretty good idea of what that is, and it's interesting for us because as council I know has heard in a number of different environments, retail has been hit hard by the pandemic. A lot of retailers are in a position where they're hurting and they are having to find alternative uses for large vacant spaces. That's another challenge that you all get to deal with. That's not our challenge here tonight. In fact, the Metroplex is an outlier. They've been very lucky. And in fact, the Metroplex is almost entirely occupied. We lost a tenant or two that moved elsewhere in the township, big tenants, and almost immediately Goldenberg Group was able to backfill those spaces. Goldenberg Group has very strong demand for the Metroplex and continues to see demand for additional space in the Metroplex. And in fact, we have one retailer that is already signed up for a pretty significant lease, and we know we have another of others that want to join the Metroplex. The reality, though, is that the retail environment certainly has changed in other ways. That's obvious. I think anytime any of us go to a store, we see vast, desolate parking lots. And we see a lot of retailers that have switched to kind of an order over the internet, pickup type retail. Just the retail environment has changed, but one of the significant impacts really is parking is not what it used to be. And people are not going to retailers in the droves that they used to. And you just have a lot of empty blacktop in a lot of different shopping centers. There obviously are exceptions. There are certain places that were underparked that are now finally getting a little bit more comfortable. But the Metroplex, I'm assuming most people go there on a regular basis, if not every weekend. I'm there almost every weekend, and I'm 20 miles away. But it's empty in terms of the parking. There's just huge fields of parking in the Metroplex. The Metroplex has over 3,400 parking spaces in that retail center. What we're looking to do is finally take that step and expand the Metroplex and their offerings. We have a couple of opportunities. One is immediate, and then we have some other, hopefully, future expansion opportunities. So we have met with staff to talk this through a little bit, but we wanted to come in front of council because our expansion necessitates relief from the zoning ordinance. And there are really two different ways for us to go about that. The zoning ordinance as it stands now really memorializes 1990s conservative parking standards, requires 4.5 parking spaces per thousand. We have 775,000 square feet of retail there. And so as I mentioned, we have over 3,400 parking spaces. To give you an order of magnitude, just before the pandemic, we had commissioned McMahon & Associates to do a parking analysis of the site. And that parking analysis showed that even during peak periods, during weekdays, peak periods on weekends, there were actually hundreds and hundreds of empty parking spaces at all times, usually exceeding 600 and 700 parking spaces just in front of the principal retailers, Target, Lowe's, and so forth. I mean, just vast swaths of vacant parking. We intend to redo that study now, and we believe that we're going to find that there's even more parking available in the center post-pandemic than there was when we did that study pre-pandemic. So we have Nordstrom Rack, who is looking to occupy 25,000 square feet. You can see that on the plan that I handed to you. The space identified for Nordstrom is all asphalt today. So this would not in any way reduce green space out there, but it would eliminate some parking. And under your ordinance, it would also require additional parking. So as I was starting to say, we have really two opportunities. We either have a short-term fix, which would be for us to potentially seek zoning relief by going to the zoning hearing board and laying out our case to the zoning hearing board, or potentially addressing with council a more long-term vision and identifying what's really appropriate now, particularly for a center like the Metroplex. I think you've heard before, the Metroplex is the only parcel developed mixed-use development district. So there aren't trickle-down effects to other properties in the township. There are ways to simply address the Metroplex and what's appropriate at the Metroplex. There's really no other. I don't think there's any other retailer with 775,000 square feet of retail space. So it certainly is unique in that respect. We also have on this plan in front of you a couple of smaller items to try and appease an existing long-term tenant, Lowe's, and that I'm happy to walk you through. We've talked these through with staff. It has to do with some of the stock, their inventory around the rear of the buildings. It also has to do with them adapting really to kind of modern retail, which includes that pickup service, and so restriping some spaces to meet that. Lowe's is obviously also heavy on contractors, and what we wanted to do is actually provide better spaces for contractors. I don't know how many times you go to Lowe's or Home Depot. I do it 2 or 3 times a weekend doing my home improvement projects, and the contractors' trucks with their trailers trying to occupy normal parking spaces is a disaster. So what we want to do is try and rearrange some of the parking for Lowe's to provide specifically for those types of uses. But the problem is that then reduces our parking. And currently we are at the required number of spaces. So to do anything when it comes to restriping, we have to seek zoning relief or amend the zoning ordinance to allow it. So we've outlined some of those on the plan for you as well. But we're really here to get feedback from council. I think we have some support generally from staff for what we're looking to do, but staff obviously couldn't direct us as to whether or not it would be appropriate to submit a proposed text amendment, or if we should simply pull together a short-term zoning hearing board application. So that's why we're here tonight, and happy to try and answer any questions that you have.
How many parking spaces are you proposing to eliminate?
I think that actually, Mike, do you have that number?
The Nordstrom rack will eliminate about 87 parking spaces. And then as it relates to the Lowe's stuff, I think there's 12 permanent based on some of the restriping for the contractor trailers and stuff. And then there's a bunch more, as you'll see there noted, as seasonal, where during the summer months or the spring they'll put out their pallets and mulch and stuff like that.
And typically, the seasonal is one of those items where I believe the township has generally been cooperative and hasn't cited us for it, hasn't raised an issue with us, as long as it stays located where it is and it doesn't become a year-round item. What we need to appease Lowe's is to confirm with them that they can continue to do that so long as they do it within a limited area, so long as they are not interfering with fire marshal and his ability to get around the site, things of that nature.
I just have two questions. The first one's an easy one, I think. Just looking at the number 5 there on the Lowe's, have they already done that?
I don't.
Over
They may
there,
have.
I swore I saw some diagonal spaces already in there. I wasn't sure if they already.
I know that John
Yes.
Williamson
Yes.
had walked
Yes.
everybody
Yeah,
through.
I think you are correct. I think they took it upon themselves to restripe that. I don't know if it's in the exact configuration that's shown, but they did stripe, to allow basically pickup trucks with a trailer or something like that to park in a single space. They did that obviously somewhat without our knowledge.
And then just another, I guess it's a more broad question, but I mean, I agree that you go over there and you see a lot of empty spaces. And how do you, again, in terms of thinking about future development or future expansion, how do you deal with, sometimes it seems like the empty spaces are empty because there's really nothing, like take for example Target, the back end of that parking lot is often very empty, but obviously people aren't going to really park there and then walk over to Barnes & Noble or DSW. So is the required parking for the complete site?
Yes.
Or are you required to have, X number in this location or that location? And then just in terms of future development, how do you make sure you're not overburdening one part of the lot where the other part sort of stays empty?
Chris, it is a great question or series of questions because it's exactly what we need to deal with. It's not just parking, it's proximate parking. And what McMahon actually did, which I'll be able to share once we update it, they did what I like to call heat maps, really showing the parking, not just in total availability, but in terms of its proximity and how often it's used, evaluating Target, evaluating Lowe's, evaluating really different quadrants of the center to determine not only is there parking available, but where is it available. So particularly with this proposal with Nordstrom Rack, there's very little demand, obviously, of the space where Nordstrom is going. There's almost never a car even in that little nook of the parking lot. But that also is really more than anything is the rear of the Lowe's lot. The retail that's in line there, the first spot or two of every aisle fills up for those users, but you have a lot of parking available in that location. Same thing with some of the other retailers. So when we've been looking at this more broadly as other potential expansion opportunities, you end up actually looking at those cold spaces, those spaces where there's parking that's almost never used, if ever used, for the expansion opportunities to take advantage. Now you would have all that cold parking available for the new user, so you're not detracting from the hot spaces for the existing users.
So you're taking away all of the parking between DSW and Barnes & Noble?
Yes.
Any other questions?
So, is there assume there's no impact to things like handicap parking, accessibility to some of the closer parking spots.
I'm not sure I heard.
Oh, so she
to
asked if
handicap?
there was any impact to the accessible parking?
No, there would not be. And in terms of additional users, we would likely have to provide some additional handicap striped spaces near the additional users because of ADA requirements.
Any other questions?
The last component that I meant to mention as well, the concept here is not just parking, or it is mainly parking driven, but when the Metroplex was originally developed, there was a maximum square footage permitted for the retail side. And any additional expansion here also requires zoning relief from that provision. That 775,000 square feet is that maximum that's permitted. So any additional retail space here, we either have to seek a variance from that maximum 775,000, or we would have to seek a text amendment for that as well. I didn't want that to go without mentioning.
I'm there. I'm in and out of here all week long, and everybody knows the spots at the far end, off by PetSmart. That's no man's land. No, you can't cross that way because you take your life in your hands. And I thought that from the beginning that it was laid out very poorly in terms of retail. I worked retail for 26 years, so this like confused me. But is there under consideration to develop that no man's land parking area with smaller retail establishments?
So Goldenberg has looked at a number of different concepts for future expansion. Some of them involve even looking at doing some modifications to that circulation pattern to improve it, because we all have that same problem when you come in and you come into that main T intersection, figuring out where the buses are going versus when I can go, where I can't. I'm lucky I'm usually going to the right, so I can just keep going, but yes, we have looked at and have plans that show some concepts right now for potentially using some of those no man land areas, because they're great spots. As long as we can make the circulation work, we would have plenty of parking available to that new user while not detrimentally impacting the existing tenants.
Any plans to make it safer for pedestrians? I mean, pretty much you have to get in your car and drive from one shop to another.
Kids stroll.
I have not seen anything other than when we've looked at the individual individual tenants within the parking field, making sure that those are accessible, from the surrounding parking. It's certainly something that we can look at in terms of trying to find some solutions. But I agree, it's a challenge. If you go to PJ's Superstore, you're not going to walk all the way over to PetSmart.
You
can't.
It's not safe.
It would be a challenge.
Are there plans for already restaurants?
We would love to do some restaurants there.
Because that's a big missed opportunity.
It
People are
is.
shopping, they get hungry.
It is what has
They
been.
leave, they don't come back.
It is what has been on the table for a number of years. We were strongly encouraged in the past to look at adding some restaurants here. But again, we would have to amend the text of the ordinance to allow the additional space. So it's something we would love to endeavor into doing if council has an appetite for that. No pun intended.
Is it just a text amendment that's needed for this, or is it?
Well,
something more?
you could do it either way. You can always do this either way. So the only thing is, a trip to the zoning board would give you a permanent result. It would not be temporary. The variance is going to run with the land. So if you got your parking spaces, a waiver a variance from the number that you need, then you're set for that. If you were to change the parking ratio, you might be back here again later,
Understood.
right? You'd want to change it again and again if you're going to add more than just.
Well, I actually, Karen, I would look at it as if we were going to take council's time and consideration to look at a text amendment. I think what we would want to put in front of you would be an amendment that would see the grander plan. We might only utilize a little bit of it up front, but something that would take into consideration the ability to bring in restaurants and what would the parking look like in I'll call it a full development scenario, rather than do that piecemeal. And that's my fear of the zoning hearing board. Not only obviously my burden at the zoning hearing board, but does that become a piecemeal attempt, and does the zoning hearing board get tired of seeing us if we come in once for Nordstrom and then come back in a year from now because we've got a great restaurant that wants to go in? Do we start to wear thin on the zoning hearing board when we could have addressed it more comprehensively?
And are you ready to address it comprehensively in a text amendment?
I think we could put something in front of you pretty quickly that would do that.
So you would be eliminating more parking and adding more traffic, people
That-
traffic and all.
That would be the hope, yes.
So you have to address the traffic patterns.
I think so.
And the pedestrian patterns. I mean, if you're gonna put the parking out in no man's land, then the people are gonna park and then they're gonna have to walk a great distance with, SUVs backing up and you can't see and all of that. I mean, I think you need to look at pedestrian safety. If you're gonna be putting people out in the middle and making them have to negotiate a lot of cars and roads that are not that safe.
And it may be a very good point that, if we are trying to keep people within the center, that maybe they're going to Target and doing some shopping and then want to go to a restaurant, you don't want them necessarily to have to get in their car to go from one to the other.
Is there also any impact to like the public transportation, like travel patterns, like where buses will now pick up and drop off, and does that have to be factored in, especially as we talk about pedestrian traffic?
Yeah, I'm not sure what control we have over that SEPTA bus station and its location. I can look into that in terms of what we can and can't do.
If you were to go to the zoning hearing board, how many variances would you need?
Right now, I believe only 2, a parking ratio and a total maximum building square footage.
And any idea the amount over 775,000?
25,000.
Sorry, I apologize. What percentage that would be?
I can't do that math quickly in my head.
couldn't either, that's why I
It's
asked.
it's about 3% or 4% if I'm math. Come on, Lonnie, check me.
3.2.
Thank you.
Okay.
I was in there.
Engineering and finance making fun of us that can't do math.
I don't have any other questions.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Rob. Appreciate it. Denise Yarnoff. Yes.
I'm going to check your map.
3.2. Yep, confirmed by Rick Carver, 3.2%.
That Harvard education gets you every time.
Harvard. Right when you can spell Harvard.
Denise, how are you?
Good, how are you? Let me see.
Cars going around.
You guys ready for me? Or?
Yep.
Good evening. My name is Denise Yarnoff. I'm here on behalf of Grayson School. My client will be here any second, but I can just get started, and when she comes, she can fill in, so I don't want to hold anybody up. And these packet of information. Too many of these.
I still have mine from the planning games.
Okay, I don't know if does anybody definitely want one? So I'm sure you're all familiar with 1 IMS Drive, and it's the location of an office building that's owned by Exeter Property Group, an affiliate of Exeter Property Group. And Grayson School is very interested in leasing the space in the building, and probably a good majority of the space in the building. Grayson School, as you'll hear more about momentarily, is a private school, independent school, K through 12 for gifted students, and they're currently located in Radnor Township. They've outgrown the space, and they're looking for larger space. They love this location because of its location, and they are really interested in this particular office building. I've spoken with Exeter, and they have been looking to fill the space with the new tenants. And I'm sure that I'm not the first person to talk to you about office space and the issues with office space during COVID, post-COVID, but there hasn't been a lot of interest for a regular office user. And part of what I'm understanding from Exeter is that while this is a great location in terms of access to get here and the road system, it's not easily walkable to other types of amenities, which from what they're hearing from potential tenants, that's something that's of interest to them. Allison, I just started talking. Okay. And so Allison will tell you more about the school in a minute. So the site is located in the LI zoning district. The LI zoning district doesn't specifically permit educational use. It does permit nursery, school, and daycare. And there's a provision in that section which allows uses of the same general character by special exception. And so we've submitted an application to the zoning hearing board requesting a special exception for use of the same general character and alternatively a variance for the use. And the intention would be to use the building basically as is. They would obviously do some internal work to the building, but there's not a whole lot that would need to be done outside. They would look in the future to potentially do some outside recreational area, and as Allison will tell you shortly, they're not the typical high school that has large fields with lights and things like that. It's more academic, although they do use outdoor space for some outdoor use. And so we're before you. I understand under your ordinance that we appear before you before the zoning hearing board. We did appear before the planning commission. They did recommend the special exception to the zoning hearing board. And I'll let Allison tell you some more, and then we can certainly talk some more about the use and the ordinance itself. So I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. I apologize for being tardy. I was under a misunderstanding that we were starting at 7, or I would have been here on time.
We're going to be done by 7.
Great. I'll try to hurry. My name is Allison Wilson Mayer, and I am a trustee and parent at the Grayson School. And I'm here on behalf of the Grayson School this evening. Our 2 co-founders, our president and our COO, could not be here this evening because they are in London with 24 high schoolers on our 2nd international trip. Last year's trip was to Italy. So I will try to do my best to represent the school and our interest here as a parent and as a trustee. My day job is in real estate, so I am a little bit familiar with the process, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. The Grayson School is approximately 8 years old. I think we're in our 8th year now. I considered the Grayson School when I was looking at schools for my child, who is now 12 years old and in the 6th grade. And at that time, it was very new and very experimental. They were going to be in their first year. That first year had 12 students and was basically in a one-room schoolhouse. We grew quickly, and this is actually our 3rd location now. Each location has actually required a special exception or a variance, despite the fact that we are currently located as a tenant in a Catholic school in Radnor. I said last week that this was that we had one place that did not need a variance. We actually did need a special exception or a variance. I forget which one at Carroll. I was corrected on that later. So we have grown very rapidly. We were able to survive the pandemic and flourish. We are now up to 170 students. We expect to end the year at 172. Because our school is growing so rapidly and our tenancy with the Catholic school is coming to an end because they have growth needs, we have growth needs, and we do want to continue on that path because Grayson is the Commonwealth's only and one of very few schools in the nation that is focused on education solely for gifted children. And this is important for a lot of reasons. We fully support public education and everything that it provides. But as with children who need special help, frequently that's not enough for these children. So these children need special help as well. The way their brains work is really interesting and it's very individual. And frequently, if they are not challenged appropriately in class, even with very good gifted programs in the public schools, they are not able to thrive. In some cases, they're not even able to survive because they shut down. Frequently, they will act out in class or with their peers. My child did that, and that is why we are at the Grayson School, and he is indeed thriving. We started in the middle of the school year last year, so we are in our second year with Grayson as a family who is there. We are accredited through the Commonwealth through PACE, P-A-I-S, the Pennsylvania Association of Independent Schools. We have an accreditation for 10 years, despite the fact that we are now only 8 years old. We just attained that accreditation, and we did it on our first try. So we're really pretty proud of that fact. This location is really important to us for a couple of different reasons. One is that our current student body is located from as far west as Reading right now and as far east as southern New Jersey. I myself live in Center City, and so our families, whether we are on transportation of some sort or whether we're taking our children to school, frequently have quite a bit of a commute, and this school is that important to us. As you can imagine, this location here in Plymouth Township is interesting to us because it is on a transportation corridor up 476 at the intersection of I-76, which makes it very easy to commute both north-south for us as well as east-west. If we move too far to the west, we lose people to the east, and that location, that population center in Center City, the further we get west, the more difficult it becomes. If we move further east, even if we move into Center City, then we have issues with fields and outdoor space, and we lose our families to the west. So we really want to maintain as many of the families that we have as possible right now while still being able to grow and expand. We do have relocations nationally, and we've had our first international relocation from a family that was looking to join from Germany to California. They were sort of in those two different geographies and were looking to come together here in the United States, and they actually selected Pennsylvania and our school after looking at several in the United States. So we're also very proud of that fact. What else can I tell you, or what else have I missed? Diversity. I do want to touch on diversity because we talked about that last week. Approximately 40% of our students are on financial aid and scholarship, and I do want to get some of these correct because I did have someone, a friend.
One of the Planning Commission members had asked about diversity, and while Allison was aware there was a lot of diversity, she didn't have the specific number, so in case you guys are interested.
So here are the numbers. 36% of our students are on financial aid. That is from some financial aid to a full ride scholarship. 33% of our students are of color, so you can imagine some of the challenges that those students have if they are in particularly the Philadelphia school district. And we are open to children regardless and families regardless of their ability to pay. 64% are male, 34% are female. We do strive to be equal, but it is, a little bit sort of bound towards what comes into the door. 2%, if you notice, don't identify as female or male. This is a very safe space for people of all cultures and all identifications. So that is very important to us culturally.
Okay, thanks.
What else?
I had handed out to everybody a packet, and on the first exhibit is just an aerial of the site, which I know you're familiar with. The second is a bit about the school, and then 3 and 4 are just layouts of the internal use of the school, but also it shows some potential future area of outdoor play area, which would be in areas that are currently impervious coverage. So there would not be necessarily an increase in any impervious coverage, and certainly we'd be back to talk to the township about that if that was to be done in the future. And then there are just 2 alternative plans, 3 and 4, and then I just attached for your convenience the portions of the LI district for special exception and for permitted uses. What's interesting is that school use is permitted in a number of different districts in the township, some of which are similar to the LI district, also high-intensity uses. And the LI district also allows for a lot of intense uses, more intense type uses than a school, including and then also including a daycare facility or a nursery. So we are excited to go forward with this, and we are happy to answer any other questions that you guys might have.
I don't have any questions. I haven't heard of the Grayson School. It's very interesting. I look forward to reading about it.
You had told me about the children graduating and going to college and how well the school does.
Yes, our first graduating class was last year. We had 5 students who graduated and were able to get into their first choice of colleges. Most of those colleges are on the smaller side, RPI, Elizabethtown, 3 more that I can't quite remember at this point, but they are sort of the more small liberal arts colleges. In some cases, a lot of them are very technical in nature, so we are not a STEM school specifically, but a lot of our children have really high aptitude specifically in math and or looking at careers in mathematics and research, medicine, those sorts of things, and then wind up going to technical colleges. We have a graduating class of 10 this year, and they are obviously currently in the college process, like many of your children or grandchildren probably are. It's a very difficult process for anyone, but these children have been very successful, a lot of them in playing schools off of each other and getting a lot of scholarships. There's one in particular that was able to land, I want to say, a presidential fellowship, and she's the only one at that school, and she came from the Grayson School, so we're thrilled for her, obviously.
And you've explained that this school has very low ratio teacher to student and larger space, which is also why you are looking for more space as well.
We're currently between 3 and 4 students to 1 faculty or staff member, which is obviously very, very low. Last year, my son's math class was 3 students and 1 teacher. This year, it's a little bit bigger. It's 10 students to 1 teacher, but that particular class is even bifurcated, so there's kind of 5 that are excelling and 5 that are kind of on a more regular path. This summer, he's looking at doing the next class up, which would be Algebra 1. So the Grayson School does have the opportunity for them to study over the summer if they want to do that, and would start as a 7th grader then in geometry if he's successful doing that. So we can go through, specifically in mathematics, we can go through a master's degree education, the equivalent of a master's degree education for high schoolers. We have some children who actually already hold patents in different areas. And our science, they are doing proper gene editing and CRISPR in some of their high school classes. My son is in a 6th grade science class. That science class is biology. I didn't have biology until I was in the 10th grade. And I'm pleased to announce that he dissected his first frog on Friday. So clearly
Exciting.
very... And had a great time doing it.
Do you guys have any questions?
How many occasions did you say you've gone through since?
So we're currently in our 3rd location. The first one was a 1-room kind of situation. The next one was at a church. And when we outgrew the church and we were no longer kind of small and cute, we had to find something more appropriate to our size. And again, we were a great match for this particular Catholic school for several years, but our rapid growth and they're wanting to really infuse their school with more growth again. They hired a new president, and so we came to a mutual determination that it was probably time for us to look for a new space. So we're in our 3rd now. This would be our 4th.
And this space would allow for future growth too.
Correct.
So they wouldn't need all the space immediately.
We are looking for our forever home.
This is just a day school. There's no boarding.
There is no boarding. We were asked that question as well. There is no boarding.
Can I ask if this soccer field and the 5,000 square foot play areas are on existing parking?
Yes.
They are.
So-
They're proposed for existing parking. So there would be impervious coverage that would be removed. We still have, there's over 600 parking spaces as built right now. And there would still be almost 400 left. I forget what the number, 363 or something like that is still left, which would be well more than what we need.
Is the requirement for educational parking spaces different than office?
Yeah, it's usually, 1 for every 5 seats.
Right, and we had looked at that and done that calculation, so we would make sure that we were in compliance with that.
Children with driver's license be allowed to drive?
They will, but again, we have a very small class. We anticipate that our senior class will be plus or minus 40 students when we are at full capacity. And so there would be a few of those driving, but it's not like we have a class of 200 or 1,000 that would be vying for parking spots.
So we don't think you need any variance for parking?
No, our goal would be not to get a variance or anything like that. And this is just a concept plan, so we certainly can massage this to make sure that we meet all the requirements.
and just so council's aware, they're before the zoning hearing board in 2 weeks.
Yes.
And any other changes to the building? Is this the exact shape of the current building? And you take 100% of the building? that's
Correct.
there?
That is correct.
And it's just internal modifications, right? It's not.
That is
there's
correct.
Nothing external.
Other than what you see on the site plan, there would be nothing like to the building or anything like that.
Soccer field.
The soccer field.
Any other questions?
No, thank you.
So I know the planning commission made a recommendation. I don't know if that was necessary or if it's just to present and you get to hear about it. And is there anything?
So if the council had any opposition, tonight would be the only night you could, well, next week would be the night you, I don't know that you would have any opposition, I'm just saying that.
Or support?
Yeah, well, they don't generally give
I know.
support, they stay neutral, you know, but it's usually opposition or neutral. But anyway, the hearing for the zoning board is on the 20th, so we have next week would be any action. I'm just looking for feedback now, if you're ready to give it or not. But that's up to you.
I don't anticipate opposition from the sounds of things.
Okay. Should we be here next week?
No news is
Probably-
good news.
Probably not. Lynn, do you have any questions?
I don't, thank you, Chris.
Any concerns?
No. My only concern is that, you know, this is a private street. The streets leading to this are private streets, Davis Drive, Lee Drive.
Yes.
This was now Innovation Drive, where they changed the name
yes.
again. But they are private streets, so if there's snow, you know, I don't know if they have a little association back there for plowing.
I think Exeter is responsible for.
Or maintenance in and out, but just so you know, they're private streets.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure, just so you know.
We are aware.
Okay.
We do like our snow days.
Okay.
The kids work so hard. They deserve snow days, not virtual snow days.
There are no snow days. No.
And none this year, that's right.
There you go. There it is.
All right. Well, thank you guys very much.
you.
Thanks for the time.
Thank you.
Good night.
All right, there's a hearing next week.
Yes. Starting at 6:30.
Any questions about the hearing for next week? All right, moving down to the small games of chance license, that's an annual thing, right?
Yes, where I submit with the county, have the annual license for this building.
Bingo night and something, so this will really come off the agenda. Just wanted to remind you, Alice, if you could do that for us this year.
Already drafted.
Oh, good, great. Do you need to check on that maybe?
In the past, I've coordinated with Kellen in order to get it signed and notarized, and then one of us files it.
Great. Okay. So that really will come off.
Anything additional for administration? Handicap parking spaces, police and public safety?
It was brought to council about the reserved handicap spaces from members of the community in Cummingtown. So I did research some of it, and based on what I've seen, I wouldn't recommend that the township get involved in it for a few reasons. I went down there, there's very few parking spaces to begin with for anybody, and I know that there was a lot of resistance when Chris went down there previously. He almost got lynched because he was taking one of the few spots away for handicap. But the biggest issue was, I talked to Conshohocken that does do it, and they apparently have over 100 of these spots, which really surprised me. But I can't get anybody there to tell me how it's enforceable. It is not covered in the vehicle code, and they don't have an ordinance, according to the people that have put the program together. So I asked, well, what do you do? And they said, well, we send the police down there and we try and shoo people away. We're not going to shoo anybody that's got a handicap placard that's in a reserved handicap spot. I mean, it's crazy. There are quite a few handicap spots in those areas anyway. The one resident that was here, there's a handicap spot in front of her house, and along that street, when it turns into Conshohocken, they have 2 handicap spots also in that neighborhood. And then on New Elm Street, there's 2 handicap spots in the area where Chris just got another request for one to go in that same area. So considering how few parking spots there are, there's a decent amount as it is. And this reserved issue, which apparently Bridgeport is planning on going to and Philadelphia uses, I don't see how you enforce it. And I would never I would never move a handicapped person away from a spot just because someone's tags on there, especially when there's no teeth to any of this. So, but I did want to look into it in all fairness to the residents, and I wanted you all to know. I suppose a way around it is to pass an ordinance, but considering how few parking spots there are down there, I think it would be an undue burden on the rest of the residents.
And there are already 5 handicap spots in that area.
There, 3 of them are ours, 2 on New Elm and 1 on Old Elm.
Yeah, there's, coming from Conshohocken, there's 2 right before our border from Conshohocken.
Those would be the other 2 that are.
And then there's 2 others right in New Elm, in our area, White Street and Corso Avenue.
Right, and then there's the one that's actually on Old Elm. So we
There's
have
actually
3,
2.
Conshohocken has 2. So there's actually 5 in that very small section. What's that, 50 yards, 75 yards worth of roadway? And there is some off-street parking in that area. It's tough for everybody. I just think this might make it tougher.
Good. Thanks, John. Anything else?
No, thank you.
Public Works, snow announcement.
One more time.
Takers, last one.
I'll take it, I haven't done it yet.
That's hot. Can't have any of that snow.
And sewer district ordinance, White Marsh area sewer district ordinance.
Yeah, so I included, I guess, the second circulation, the 3-005, it's right after that page. You'll see that the current code has properties listed in it. And I thought maybe it's time to update. There's been a lot of things in Cold Point and along Butler Pike, so I figured it's about time we do an update to the White Marsh sewer area.
Just one quick question.
Mhm.
With the 2622 craft custom homes,
Mhm.
do they all have parcel numbers accounted for yet?
Yes, so they're the ones that I've handwritten on the side, 26016, 10, 14, 18. See that, Butler? They do have parcel numbers, yes. Yeah, and I can get them for you. Sorry, I just wrote them in without the parcel numbers, but yes.
I just didn't know how far along they were with requesting
Yeah.
Board of Assessment to make changes or to get those parcel numbers in.
Yeah, they have parcel numbers, right? We've got it, you have them set up in Municity or Tracer, yeah. It's Chris's number, yeah, so there are parcels. And, I mean, it doesn't have to be, obviously, it can't be next week, but it could be next month or in the following month. Just if, council would like to update them, I think we should. Pretty soon, we're gonna have a Whipping area update.
We will. And then is every property on this a part of the intermunicipal sewer agreement between White Marsh Township Authority and Plymouth, or do we have to go back and, should we double check that?
I think they're all, they're all on there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So last time we did an update was probably when Miss Brambley connected to public sewer.
She's on here. Her address.
I see me right
I see
there.
you, yeah. Your
That
address is
was
on
the
here.
last time I remember working on that agreement, but.
Yeah, the Delancey Place, Rittenhouse Square, that's actually Cold Point Village, Rittenhouse Squares. The Village Station are the newer ones that Sal just built, the 12 homes there.
Oh, yeah.
On the side of the CVS. So we just figured it's time to do a little catch up. And then the 6 for Craft Custom Homes. They just got, they're not even built yet, but yeah, it's time to do an update. Just want to bring that to your attention.
Would you like me to draft this? Is that what the request is? Or is
Yeah,
I think
makes
so,
sense to
I
me.
think. Sure. As you can see, all the rest are already in there. And then, maybe, Alex, if we waited an extra month, we could get the wood painting there too, because I think it's all in the same ordinance. We have the Norristown area.
we do the bill of sale at the same time?
We could do it all. Get both the Payne and White Marsh sewer systems, districts updated in the same ordinance. Thank you.
That will be an April project,
Yeah.
or an April agenda item.
All right. Anything else for Public Works? Mr. Manai?
Nothing, sir.
Okay. Where are we at here? All the way down to Conocelli, is that correct?
Yes, and that would be Mike, because they're ready for conditional approval. Now, so we need a solution for that one. Joel's memo is in the book.
I'll get that over to Linda by Thursday.
Okay, great, thank you.
Just a question. Can't let you off the hook that easy, but this reminds me, just something I noticed. Who, in that area around the jug handle, who would be responsible for cleaning up excessive trash?
County's the jug handle.
I've heard it from several people how horrible it is right now.
I get complaints.
It's
screaming all the
Do
time.
we
I tell them-
have like a way to reach out to strong arm a little bit there?
The county and or like, does PennDOT maintenance ever do like Allenwood Road and the interstate? I've heard right there, as you get on and off.
Yeah, I
First
reached out to the
Interstate, it's
DA's
just
office
awful.
also for the
Workers?
weekend, yeah,
Workers,
and
community service
since
workers.
COVID, they stopped that,
Doing it that way.
yeah, we're getting a lot of complaints though, some of the state residents.
Is it blowing off of garbage trucks going into Covanta? What do you think? I mean,
I'm sure in part, yeah.
Partly. And it's been windy. We've had a lot of windy
But
days.
they're
I mean, there's like some vegetation there where it probably gets stuck, and that's why it all
It's
lands there.
overgrown too. It's dry.
Does the county have a maintenance department, do you think, that would do it?
I can reach out
if
to
you
them.
ask?
Yes.
I've heard from several people. It's awful. It's awful.
We've actually been on our public works, and we've actually been on some trash detail, we went to Hickory Road.
On our streets,
Today, yeah, on ours, but there's we've been cleaning up Brook Road a little by little, Allen Road, so out by Norris House has been,
Stands out because the rest of the township is so clean, so when you see a spot like that, it stands out. Thanks. Royal Farms?
That's an extension for me.
And Andrews
That's
Estates?
you.
Anything else not listed on there? Any notes for anything?
There's just one project I just want to mention, which is it was called Corsair, and they built a twin house down on Fulton Street, and I wanted to ask council, they still have money in escrow for some landscaping that they never gave to the people that bought the homes, and I confirmed that the money's still at the bank. We reached out I emailed the principal of the three men that own Corsair LLC. Just want to ask, if he doesn't respond, they don't respond, any three of them don't respond to the email, that the homeowners are asking for their landscaping, and wondering if they don't respond, should we send like a certified letter next? I mean, Joel's made a phone call, left a voice message, I've sent an email, maybe a registered letter or certified letters next, and then maybe a default on their escrow, because they've been finished for like 4 years now, 4.5 years, and they just never finished the project. Money is still at the bank.
I apologize, I misunderstood. So they never finished the project, not you're trying to return the funds and close it
No,
down?
well, declare a default, hire some other company to put the landscaping in. The people want their landscaping, and they should have their landscaping.
They paid for it.
Yeah, they paid for it, really, in purchasing their homes. In fact, so it came up right now because one family is moving after 4.5 years, and they want to tell the next homeowner that the landscape's still coming.
And we have any sense of where they're registered with the Department of State or with the Harrisburg Corporation search?
I didn't, of course, they're from New Jersey, of course.
Okay.
It was sold. It was one of those land developments. It got started by somebody, and then it got sold to this company called Corsair out of New Jersey. And you remember that Corsair? They were, yeah.
We can
They
start
finished the
process.
houses, they sold the houses. They had a problem when they sold the houses. They didn't really, the deeds weren't really, they sold all the land to one person instead of the two. It turned into a big legal battle. That's what held up the rest of it.
Is it,
I just think, should we send a certified letter first?
I would send it certified, but is it, sorry, cash escrow or letter of credit, or
It's
what are we holding?
independent mortgage right here on Germantown Pike.
So it's a tri-party agreement?
Tri-party agreement.
Oh, so they have cash in the bank for
I
us?
called him and
Okay.
he said the money's there. But it's-
I apologize, for some reason in the beginning I thought you were going to refund them, I didn't realize
Oh,
that
no, no,
was
I
to-
wouldn't give the money back, no. I would take their money
Absolutely,
and declare a
we can
default
order a
and
default
then
and-
have to hire somebody else to do it.
And
And
we
it's
would-
about $8,300 worth. It's like 2 or 3 homes. It's not a lot of money, but it's significant to them. They want their landscaping.
And that would require an act of council, so we could start getting some estimates and declare them in
Should I
default.
send one letter first?
I would send a
registered
certified,
letter, and then
yeah.
after that. That's all right. Bring that to your attention. We'll do the letter first then.
Mr. Wallace?
I have nothing.
Anybody have anything for Mr. Wallace? Zoning, who wants it?
Oh.
Any concerns on the zoning?
No.
I haven't done it for a while.
No, I don't have any signs, the Grayson School and 2 homes.
Have
Is
you applied for
Brixmore
both?
represented by council?
For a sign, I don't know. I don't know. The sign company. Planning
Especially
agency
with
doesn't look at them either, but.
everything going on out there, I could reach out to Dave Sander to confirm that they have council.
You need for a sign.
Anytime a entity is before the zoning hearing board is considered authorized practice of law, so they need to have a council.
Lawyers always got to get involved.
If you had a non-lawyer representative, you could have some ramifications that the company would have to live with.
I understand.
And there's appealable rights. But yes, it seems like it's a self-serving role.
All right. Parks and Rec, upcoming events. Anybody want to read the upcoming events? And Mr. Brady, any comments on any of those? Anything?
Yeah, they're filling up, so let's get the words out for you.
Nick? The bill of sale, action.
I thought this is your, this was the children's size gym equipment or training equipment. So I think you just had
I'm
this
sorry,
from-
Karen, can you say what this is again?
It's to sell some, like, what is it, treadmills and other youth-sized training equipment.
And then we had bought back in 2006, so we want to use this space for something else. It just kind of sits in the corner in the small group training room. So we put it on municipal bid, and somebody, I think, wants it from out in Unionville, that area, I think for his home. But we can sell it, and we can use that money to make some storage in that area. The other problem is the room is full. We have a wait list for classes for folks to get in there, so we can take 2 more in each of our classes in there when we get rid of it. So it was 2006, so it's been a while.
So selling some old equipment, not underused, cleaning up some space for better use, in a nutshell.
Thank you.
Change men to persons.
Is that,
Phil has it.
Just change men to persons. On the first line. Yeah, it's been updated to know all persons by these present.
I'll find it. I'll check.
Thank you.
No problem.
does anybody want to read that one?
I'll take it.
Lynn?
Sure.
All right. Pool pump room.
So I don't know how familiar you guys are with the pool pump room, but our pool pump room is in need of repair. We have some estimates. We've had some engineers and architects doing specifications for us. We do have some estimates, and they're significant, and I guess we were here to talk about whether or not the council's interested in moving forward with that project. The estimates we've gotten are probably between $1.5 and $2 million to do the pump room, along with, while the pump room shut down, there's some improvements we want to make in the natatorium also, so that's included in that estimate, but it is a significant number.
And then we'll lose the revenue, because it's going to be, pool will be closed for
It'll
what,
be
about
closed
3
for
months?
approximately 3 months. And we need to plan it ahead of time, because right now there's long lead times on HVAC equipment. So, I guess the time that Phil and the staff here were saying would be the best time would probably be starting in August and going through to the end of the year.
And I guess the big question is, like, is this thing at the end of its rope? It has to be done now?
So the problem is we tried doing phasing. We tried to repair certain things, but you're kind of chasing it down, because by the time you get back to, panels and disconnects and things like that, you can't get it all done. It's just, the pumps run 24/7, 365, so you basically have to do stuff at night, and you just can't get a significant amount done. I mean, the real problem with the room is the way they build them now, they don't share the atmosphere with the pool. They're separate rooms with their own ventilation, their own HVAC. There's caustic chemicals in there, there's acid, there's chlorine, corrosive materials. So our pump room shares the atmosphere with the pool, and that's part of the reason why it's in such bad shape. I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it does. I mean, it's not something that, if it goes, it goes, and we're
If
in
it
trouble.
goes, then we're doing it. I mean, we have spare pumps for every pump. There's 6 or 8 pumps in there. We have spare pumps on the shelf that if a pump would go, we could replace it within a day or 2 days. We just recently had sprinkler head or sprinkler pipe go, and we had to have that repaired. The whole, all the HVAC ductwork, all the sprinkler pipe, all the joist hangers, everything is corroded.
And was this originally in this year's budget for about $1 million, but now we're looking at closer to 2?
Yeah, 1.5 to 2. And we won't really know until we bid it out. Or, we won't know until we get a firm number, but they're estimates. And there is, there's some contingencies and some some I'll say fudge in there, but that's the numbers the estimates we've gotten from the experts.
And that would include making the atmosphere separate from the pool.
Correct.
I think, and the issue here is that if we're going to continue to utilize the pool, it's going to have to get fixed.
Sooner or later, it's
And
gonna
unless
have to
we
get done.
decide that we no longer want to utilize the pool. But that's a much different conversation. That's a different conversation.
Yeah.
And the issue is, if it goes and we have to close, it's going to affect a lot of people. But if we can plan for it, we can minimize the revenue we'll lose. And there's already people calling and reserving birthday parties in September. So if we can start to tell them, look, this is going to happen, start to think about how you're going to exercise, what you're going to do. We'll be back, but for those 3 months, we have to get this done now, because we've been running for 23 years, and this work has to get done. So we can sell people on it, and I don't want to catch them by surprise.
There's going to be much gnashing of teeth.
There is. I know. I mean, it's like a church. I mean, they go every day, and they swim, and it makes them feel better. Right, I know. You're in there, and there's a lot of folks in your classes. So, and we hate to close, but it's not work we can do while they're in there. And it'll be better. It's going to be better. The atmosphere is going to be better. We'll be able to control the pool temperature better, which is a big issue, right?
I would be so
now we have a
groaning and groaning when I
right,
get it.
right.
Yeah, I've been trying to float it out there. You know, that people say, oh, well, that's not going to happen this year. Could. What about the employees of the pool? What happened?
Right? It's just, this is just part of a much bigger conversation about, you know, the future of the center and the vision for it and what we're going to do, but it's also sort of like right in our face right now that, you know, we can't sit here and drag our feet about it, right?
Like if you're gonna keep the pool, it needs to be done at some point. I'll just say it one more time, I'm concerned about paying for it. I'm concerned about paying for it. We're not finished the project that we're working on, $20-some million. We've made a commitment to the Harmonville Fire Company for a couple $1 million they have to match their grants that they got, and that's $2 to $3 million or more as the projects turn to be more expensive. And we have a sinkhole right now, which we have like no idea how much that's going to cost to fix. And
that affects the sewer system.
And there's a giant sewer pipe suspended in air, and we just hope it doesn't break before they can get it filled underneath. So these are my concerns. I would let it run. I would let the pool ride until we finish our building, until we find out how much the sinkhole costs, and pay Harmonville. And if we find that we still have money for the pool, you know, great. I just don't know how we're going to pay for it. There's just not that much money in the bank. If the sinkhole turns into over $1 million, I mean, I have no idea what it costs to fill a sinkhole. And nobody else will know either until they start putting that flowable fill in.
I just keep thinking
the
of
next
Chemical
day, if
Road.
it disappears, and they have to put, you know, several more truckloads in, and the next day, you just
I just remember
don't know.
the like 50-some trucks that went to the Park Apartments that they kept filling and filling.
Yeah.
50 cement trucks.
There's no way to know how much that's going to cost us. And we can try to recoup some of the money from the owner later. The owner's Exeter right in front of the Grayson School. That's the property that's on, right? That is where it is. But I did mention the sinkhole.
I mean, obviously, those issues are major issues that, you know, the building and the sewer pipe area are things we don't have a choice.
Right, and the fire company, we have to provide fire
Right.
protection for the residents and businesses of this township.
Right. Like things we don't have a choice.
Right.
I mean, this, at some point, we're not going to have a choice. The question is, can we get through the other stuff first before we have to address it? Can we get through this year, this calendar year?
There's some things I'm going to have to do now. I mean, there are a couple issues, nothing major, but we have a few issues that we'll have to address in the meantime. But yeah, I mean, I think that we'll have to do it right away.
And if something monumental happens, the pool might just be closed for more than 3 months, because it's going to be closed for 3 months when they do the work. If it had to be, it has to be. I don't want it to be, you know, but if it had to be, I'm a little, you know, if it's something so major breaks that it doesn't make any sense to fix. I mean, you've been like 4,000 here and, you know, 1,000 there to fix things, but you know, I'm just not comfortable. I'm not comfortable with an up to $2 million disbursement. It's, you know, it's somewhat discretionary. Those other things are just not discretionary.
And there's too much that we're not even sure what the unnecessary items are going to cost.
Exactly, the unknowns.
Lynn, did you have a question?
No, I just, I guess wanted to share a few thoughts. I mean, I would agree, Chris, that this is part of a larger conversation. I mean, it is facing us today, but it's part of a larger conversation. And I would share some of Karen's concerns in terms of, like, you know, how we plan to pay for it, especially since it's more than initially projected. So I agree that we can't drag our feet, but maybe it is part of a larger conversation and a conversation about budgeting and finances and how we would cover it, and perhaps, you know, when the right time is to cover it. So I'm not sure if we're being asked today. I'm having a hard time hearing some of the conversation in the room, but I'm not sure if we're being asked today to make a decision about covering that, or if this is the beginning of that conversation.
asking, could they go out to bid? And I think that's the question. Is now the right time to go out to bid for this project?
I guess I just come back to, like, I mean, like, Rick, if we can get through at least this year before we take that step, I mean, if you're confident that we can.
I mean, I'm pretty confident. You never know what can happen, but I mean, there are a few things that have to be addressed. You know, we have a couple of leaky fill pipes and things like that that we'll have to take care of. Nothing major, but you know, like I said, we have spare pumps on the shelf for all the pumps. So if something like that would go, I mean, you know, something go in the middle of the night and you can run 500,000 gallons of water into that room before anybody gets here. I mean, that's a good catastrophe, but we have pumps for pump and go. So I think that we would probably get through.
If you think that's going to happen, you could always shut it down sooner. I hope it shut it off,
Yeah, well, I mean, that's, it happened once already, years ago, but it's not something you
500,000
can.
gallons of water came in the
No,
budget.
but it flooded, it flooded the, I mean, 500,000 gallons is what's in the pools. It did flood the room. Since then, we put some safety measures on with some flow switches that will turn the water off if it gets, it's like so that,
Barns or something?
yes. So I guess the answer is yes, we could limp along until you guys make a decision on what the future is.
I guess it's just a unique situation that these two other uncertain project costs, being whatever the building ends up finishing at and the sewer interceptor, are just big unknowns right now that have to take priority.
Yeah, besides the sinkhole, there's the sewer interceptor that's out to bid.
Well, that we know, I mean, at least that one we kind of anticipate. Well, that one we did anticipate,
Right.
but it was the repair work.
Yeah, it's the sinkhole.
I mean, I'm not saying the same word. I'm just really purposely not saying that word. I don't like that word. But
That is a budgeted project, but that's also out there.
right.
Again, more important, to me, that's more important, just saying.
Well, again, I mean, all important, but I don't know. We don't necessarily have a choice
Not
that
when
we
it
have
comes
to
to
prioritize
sewage.
we have to prioritize the other
Not when it comes to
ones.
sewage.
And
The
if
difference between importance and obligation.
Exactly, and we're obligated to have the fire department.
the concern, I guess the biggest concern is this isn't just a little bit more than we thought. It's potentially double what we budgeted for at the beginning of the year, and that's a big difference.
We did add a little bit inside the natatorium itself with some paint and some sound. Sound baffles that are in there are 15 years old. They have to come down to do the work. So there is some additional work in there that originally was just a pump room. It started back before the pandemic was, and so we did add some stuff to make it more expensive, but that kind of stuff is more, kind of window dressing stuff. The pump room is a mechanical room that if it goes, if something serious happens in the pool, it'll shut down.
So are we comfortable with saying we're going to hold off on going out to bid for the foreseeable future? And just hope for the best? And
Fingers crossed, right?
And if these other projects don't turn out to be as expensive as we thought, then, you're ready to go out to bid. It's not that I don't want the pool to be fixed, but I just don't know if we have the money to fix it.
Pay for dinner before you get dessert.
all right. Bid for foul ball netting?
Yeah, that's a budgeted item for 2023. I just wanted the council's permission to go ahead and get out the bid. That's the foul ball netting at the community center park, baseball and softball field.
Questions? Sounds good. Phil, anything else?
No, that's what we got.
Citizen board vacancy announcements. Anybody want to read those?
I can do that.
Kathy. 818 Germantown demolition.
Yeah, I wanted to bring this up. And just suggest that maybe we go ahead with the demolition and not offer it to the firemen and the policemen to practice in it, just in case. I can tell you more about that later. I'll tell you why. But I think that's another project that they want to do and do it without practicing in it.
Do we know demolition costs? Do we have that?
We put it out to bid, or we
Put
get
up the
quotes.
bid, I mean,
Yeah.
the last one we did didn't have a basement, I think it was like $16,000, that was one down JFK Park. No basement, usually basement's a little bit more expensive, this is a little bit larger square foot house, so 30, 35, 40, I don't know how significant those prices have risen since, all the numbers from 2019 don't mean anything anymore.
Okay. So are we asking for an authorization?
Just to move forward with the demolition.
Questions? Again, having a building, an unoccupied building sitting there
Attractive.
always makes me nervous.
And we want to turn it into open
Bid.
space.
Is that what you're seeking?
Authorization to go out to bid. for that
Yes,
demolition.
okay. I just wanted to make sure we're clear on what.
Yeah.
I wonder if there are any opportunities with that property to look at potential grants from the county. I was sitting in on a presentation recently around like green space and just like the awareness of preserving even small spaces. And there's sometimes funding for things that we might not realize. And I wonder if there might be any funding available or grant available for how we manage both the demolition and what comes next with that space.
I can certainly look into it. I have a lot of, I get emails all the time about what grant, what eligible projects are in different grant rounds.
Yeah.
I've never really seen demolition as one of them. We've already acquired the property, so generally you would see open space acquisition as an eligible project. I've never seen demolition, but we can always look into it and try.
Yeah, I have a person I might be able to ask, Karen. I'm happy to help with that.
Okay.
There's a neighbor and a friend who's also part of the Montgomery County planning group, and
Okay.
maybe I can ask her just if she could, if there is anything, and if so, if she could point us in the right direction, I'd be happy to help.
Okay, sure, great.
Thank you,
I'll
Lynn.
look into it too.
So we're good with the authorization? We're good?
Yes.
Anything additional?
I didn't know if you wanted to, so you kind of gave Denise Yarnoff an answer about the Grayson School, no opposition. Anything else about the Metroplex, whether they should go to the zoning board, or if you would want to do a text amendment? I'm sure they'll be asking tomorrow morning.
I guess my quick question is it more advantageous for us to do one or the other, or should we kind of leave it to them to which avenue they would prefer?
It's their choice.
It's their choice. They could always submit a request, an application for a text amendment to Karen's office, tomorrow morning. But I think if we're, obviously, as we've discussed numerous times, the text amendment is completely legislative. You have complete control of it. There are some concerns I would have in how that text amendment would need to be structured to not impact any ongoing litigation, where I believe it might be easier for them to prepare the zoning hearing that would address some of my office's concerns.
It sounded to me like it would be quicker unless they have this master plan with the restaurants and how many other parking spaces they would need to use and a bigger plan. I mean, they showed us this plan for that, filling in the space between the Barnes and Noble and DSW. That's all they showed us so far. So
And
I
the
would think
expansion of Saks.
quicker.
Correct.
But again, it's their choice, but if they filed a petition to change a text amendment, you could just say no. You don't want to hear that, and that's completely your choice. If they file a zoning hearing, that has to be heard within 60 days. You think they should go to zoning?
Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else before executive? All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank y'all.